Hey, what is up folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to learn all about the Barbary Wars. Now the Barbary Wars usually refer to the conflicts taking place between certain European nations and the North African pirates. So how does the United States fit into all of this? Well, soon after their independence in 1783, the US also had their run-in with these North African pirates where many of their ships were stolen. It was because of this that George Washington, obviously the president at the time, formed the US Navy in order to protect the US from further incidents. Now this wasn't the only time the US got involved with these pirates, as in I think the early 1800s they came to the rescue and aided these European nations in their wars against the North African pirates. And I believe this was during Thomas Jefferson's presidential reign. Now that is the extent of my knowledge on the Barbary Wars, so I thought I'd get the finer details filled in by none other than the fat electrician, who I regard as probably the best storyteller on YouTube. So this is going to be absolutely amazing. I cannot wait. Let's get right into it.
All right, here's the deal. For 3 centuries,
this is be
pirates
awesome.
from the Barbary states of Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli would raid merchant vessels in the Mediterranean, steal all the goods, and imprison and turn all of the crew members into slaves. So why was this allowed to go on for over 300 years? Well, the only navies powerful enough to stop these pirates at the time were the Spanish, the French, and the British. And they all came to the same conclusion that it would be cheaper to pay off the pirates, giving them a yearly tribute to not raid their ships rather than go to war with them. So now those three empires aren't getting their ships raided.
Sorry guys, I don't want to stop this too often during this video, but I just find that so interesting that these European nations would rather pay off these pirates than get involved in any sort of conflict. So I guess in this way, they inadvertently rewarded bad behavior. Now it's interesting to note that, when he talks about the biggest nations that were able to protect themselves, he doesn't mention the United States. That's probably because this was soon after their independence. So at this point, they're not necessarily the strongest state as far as defending themselves. So they're pretty vulnerable at this point. So it'll be interesting to see if they get attacked soon.
Which is fine, that's a good thing, I guess, but here's the catch with it that they may or may not have known at the time, but they definitely figured out somewhere along the way. Now, the pirates are only raiding all the smaller nations, okay? It's like Walmart, Target, and Amazon getting together, encouraging shoplifting, knowing that they can shoulder the financial burden, but it puts all the other mom and pop stores out of business, and they become the only ones selling goods. Except instead of retail stores, we're talking about entire nations. This goes on for literally hundreds of years, but America is still part of the British Empire, so they fall under their umbrella of protection, so it's never an issue. That is until the American Revolution started on April 19, 1775, with the shot heard around the world, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and the famous story of a 78-year-old veteran going out into his front yard and shooting 3 redcoats as they retreated back to Boston, sending the message for all of America that the British Empire should get off of our lawn. Fast forward, 1783, America wins the Revolutionary War, officially becoming its own country, and all of America's merchant vessels start flying the old red, white, and blue. And pretty much immediately, 1784, one of America's merchant vessels is captured by Barbary pirates from the country of Morocco. As an act of good faith for a new nation, Spain actually pays off the pirates, gets the American vessel and all of its crew back, returns it to America, and then advises the American government, hey, you guys should start paying these guys off too. That's what all the big nations are doing. At which point, America's minister to France, a guy by the name of Thomas Jefferson, chimes in and he's like, no, absolutely not. I'm gonna go talk to him. Now, obviously I'm paraphrasing here, but basically Thomas Jefferson rolls up and he's like, hey, don't ever fuck with my boats ever again or else. At which point the Sultan of Morocco is like, I'm sorry, who are you? I'm Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of America. We just kicked the British out of our entire country. We're our own thing now. I'm sorry, you fucking pilgrims did what now? We beat the British in war and now we are our own country. You mean to tell me that a bunch of colonial farmers with muskets went toe-to-toe with the largest military on the planet that is so good at war that they can literally wear high-vis red coats the entire time and still win, and you beat them? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I mean, yeah, I could probably just leave your boats alone from now on. That historically seems like it's going to be a really good idea. And that is the story of how Morocco came to be the first country to recognize America as its own sovereign nation by signing the Moroccan-American Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which is the first and longest lasting peace treaty in American history.
That is funny. It's funny. I love how he described the Revolutionary War, but that is essentially true. I mean, these British colonists that were occupying America, they fought against the British Empire and won. And I think that's why many old timers in America have so much respect for the founding fathers of America. And that's why they get upset when it seems like the new generation spits on the values upon which America was built. It is really just unbelievable looking back in American history, especially the Revolutionary War, and seeing what those people did to fight for independence and freedom. I know that's fairly unrelated to the Barbary Wars, but it's honestly, it makes me proud, and I'm not even American. It truly is.
At which point Thomas Jefferson is like, wow, that actually worked out perfect. I'm going to go to the other 3 Barbary states and tell them the same thing now. But of course, there's going to be a catch with that. You see, there's 4 Barbary states, but Morocco's the only one that's actually truly independent, and the other 3 are just subservient branches of the Ottoman Empire. So Thomas Jefferson and John Adams go to talk to the ambassador of Tripoli, and they're like, hey, can all the Ottoman Barbary states leave our boats alone? At which point the ambassador informs them, absolutely not. You see, we're part of the Ottoman Empire. We don't need to listen to you. We're not scared of you guys. And it is our official stance that, and I quote, it was written in the Quran that all nations which had not acknowledged the prophet were sinners, who it was the right and duty of the faithful to plunder and enslave. You know, unless they give us money, of course. Everything's got a price.
I didn't know that.
So Thomas Jefferson is like, well, okay, we're going to war then. And that's when John Adams is like, whoa, 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 calm down. Let's just pay the tribute so that our ships can be fine. We already disbanded the Continental Navy after winning the Revolutionary War. We don't have a navy to fight these guys. We just have to give them the money. So that's what happened. For the next 8 to 10 years, America would pay tribute every year to these 3 remaining Barbary states, and every year they wanted more and more money, and eventually even that wasn't enough because Algiers began attacking American vessels anyways. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that for the first time in American history, somebody has fucked with one of America's boats and they're not immediately sorry about it.
Don't touch our boats.
The president at the time, George Washington, goes to Congress and pretty much tells them what's going to happen because at this point in time, George Washington is basically the king of America. Nobody actually knows if he's going to step down from presidency or not. So he's like, hey, guess what? You guys are going to pass the Naval Act of 1794, establishing the United States Navy. And at the very top of that document, it very clearly states that the purpose we are building the United States Navy is so that we can combat Algerine corsairs, which is just a fancy word for state-funded pirates. Yes, I'm telling you that the founding document of the most powerful navy the world has ever seen at the top specifically states the sole reason for their creation is to hunt down and destroy pirates that had the audacity to fuck with one of America's ships. We've officially entered the find out portion of the story. America immediately commissions the building of 6 enormous frigates covered in guns to go fight these pirates. Fast forward to when the frigates are done, it takes a couple years. It is now 1798, and George Washington has decided to step down from power, allowing for an election to happen, and we are now into the second president of America, John Adams. And John Adams decides he would rather keep paying tribute.
Disappointed!
America just created the Navy, spent $1 million creating all these frigates, and now John Adams isn't going to use them for their intended purpose. Obviously, a lot of people are upset, including his own vice president, Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson, the vice president at the time, immediately begins campaigning to run against the sitting president in the next election. And one of his biggest platforms is that he is going to go fight these pirates rather than pay them tribute.
Hey guys, I just want to know from you, when last in a presidential election, especially as it pertains to the United States, has the vice president tried to overthrow the sitting president in an election? Because I'm just looking back, the last president, Donald Trump, he didn't have any problems with that. Obama didn't have any problems with that. Obviously, Joe Biden eventually became president. And, before that, George W. Bush didn't have problems with that. So it must be quite an unprecedented scenario where the vice president is essentially saying that the president is not fit to serve. Can't happen too often. And that was just the second presidential reign where John Adams took charge. So pretty crazy scenes indeed.
And his slogan for this is, and I quote, "Millions in defense before a cent in tribute." Okay, just so we're clear, Thomas Jefferson's platform for running for president is, I'm going to spend millions of dollars in defense, which might as well be hundreds of billions of dollars at that point, because America no longer negotiates with terrorists, and I'm pretty sure my high school English teacher would refer to this as Foreshadowing. So Thomas Jefferson wins the election. The entire world finds out that he's going to be the third president of the United States of America. And then on March 4th, 1801, the day of his inauguration, he receives a letter from Yusuf Karmanali, the Pasha of Tripoli. If you don't know, Pasha is like the dictator, the king, the president, the main dude in charge. And at this point, Thomas Jefferson, the guy who just ran an entire presidential campaign on, I'm going to go fight pirates, is thinking in his head like, maybe this guy found out that I'm about to send a navy over there to beat him up, and he's going to send an apology. Maybe he wants to sign a peace treaty like Morocco did. This is already working out great. I might not even have to send my navy over there. He opens the letter, and Pasha Yusuf Karmanali has decided that he is going to poke the Pilgrim King because he is now demanding that because of the new administration, the United States owes him an extra $225,000 in tribute. And Thomas Jefferson is pissed.
You're trying to get crazy with this. Don't you know I'm local?
Originally, Thomas Jefferson was going to have to go to Congress, get permission to activate the Navy to send him over there to fight these pirates, but not now. He's so mad we're activating the Rainbow Shortcut to ass-whooping land, and Pasha Yusuf is going to have some consequences immediately because he's sending the Navy today. But like I said, it takes a literal act of Congress to send the US Navy over there on a military mission, so Thomas Jefferson is like, that's fine, we just won't send them on a military mission. Fill up one of our frigates with a bunch of gifts and peace offerings for Pasha Yusuf, and then give it a nice healthy escort of other frigates to defend it, and send them on their merry way to deliver the gifts. Right after he gives the commander of the United States Navy the standing order that he is also to defend any American citizen or ship from any potential aggression. Not aggression, potential aggression. If he thinks that somebody else might be thinking about doing something aggressive,
take them out, take them down, do your
thing.
stuff.
So the Navy sets sail. They're gone. They're en route. Thomas Jefferson's sitting in his office and he comes to the realization, man, I'm pretty sure these pirates are going to attack him, but if they don't, they're actually going to end up giving Pasha What's-His-Nuts a bunch of these gifts. And I can't have it. So he whips out the old quill and parchment, he writes a letter back and sends that off. And that letter basically reads, hey, America's done giving you tribute for the rest of forever, F off. And obviously the letter makes it there first, at which point Pasha goes to the American consulate building and chops down the flagpole with the American flag on it, which in that part of the world is how you declare war. So the US Navy shows up off the coast of the Barbary States, the pirates attack them because they've already declared war, the US Navy defends themselves, word gets back to America, Congress then is like, oh, hey, we're at war, we're gonna go ahead and give Thomas Jefferson permission to use the United States Marine Corps at his discretion. And this is why, to this day, the United States Marine Corps is the only branch of the US military that can be sent and deployed anywhere in the world without congressional approval. So for the next 2 years, the US Navy and the Marine Corps set up a naval blockade and just go on a pirate hunting extravaganza until October of 1803, when the USS Philadelphia would get hung up on an uncharted reef right off the coast of Tripoli. The pirates seize this opportunity, they attack the USS Philadelphia, board it, take the crew hostage, and then over the next couple months they were able to repair it enough to get it back into the harbor at Tripoli, where they then anchored it in place and used it as fixed artillery because it had way more guns than any other vessel they had. Cue our first main character, Stephen Decatur, the commander of the USS Enterprise, America's unofficial flagship. He decides that he's going to don his plot armor, take the USS Enterprise out, and acquire himself a pirate ship, which he does. He then takes that pirate ship and the USS Enterprise and sails both of them to Sicily, where he hires 5 Sicilian mercenaries that know how to speak Arabic. They then sail back to Tripoli, where Decatur and 80 Marines are going to go below deck of this pirate ship, which has now been christened the USS Intrepid, as the 5 mercenaries are going to sail directly into the heart of the harbor, pretending to be Barbary pirates. They then go directly to the USS Philadelphia, 80 Marines and Stephen Decatur run out, kill the entire crew of pirates that are on the USS Philadelphia, and reclaim it. Unfortunately, the USS Philadelphia is too damaged to actually be used as a ship ever again, at which point Stephen Decatur decides, fine, we're just going to burn the entire thing to the ground because if we can't have it, nobody can. Deprive the enemy of nice things. I'm pretty sure Sun Tzu said that. So that's exactly what they do. They light the USS Philadelphia on fire, they're positive it can't be put out, and then they bounce. Not a single American is injured, and Stephen Decatur is hailed a hero because he has now led what is, in my opinion, America's first special operations mission. So now that that's taken care of, the problem at hand is that the crew of the USS Philadelphia is still being held hostage by the Barbary pirates, and they want a ton of money in exchange for them back. However, America no longer negotiates with terrorists, and that's not an option. Cue our next two main characters, William Eaton and Presley O'Bannon.
Yo, before we continue, so that statement he just said there, America does not negotiate with terrorists. We hear that today, right now. America does not negotiate with terrorists. So this is probably one of the earliest events where America decided to not negotiate with terrorists. So very cool to see how modern day America is influenced by what happened all the way back then. It's almost pretty good foreshadowing.
Before you ask, yes, Presley O'Bannon, as in the USS O'Bannon, the Fletcher-class destroyer from World War II that sank a Japanese submarine with potatoes. So they go in and they pitch their idea of how they're going to get the crew of the USS Philadelphia back, and it is, by every definition, a special operations mission. Basically, they want to take themselves, 2 dudes, plus 6 Marines for a total of 8 guys, and they're going to get dropped off in Egypt, because in Egypt is Yusuf Karmali's brother that is living in exile because Yusuf kicked him out because he is technically the rightful heir of Tripoli. So they're going to get that guy and all the buddies that are loyal to him, like 500 men, and then they're going to march them through the desert to Derna, where they are then going to use them to fight and take over the city and exchange the city for the crew of the USS Philadelphia. And upon hearing this ridiculous plan, the US military leadership is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You want to take a small contingency of men, be dropped off in a foreign country, meet up with a rebel leader who already has a bunch of men, and then convince him that you're going to help him overthrow a current dictator, and then he can be the new dictator, and basically we're using other people to fight other people that we don't like to benefit us. And Presley O'Bannon and Eaton are like, yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. And the government is like, this is a terrific idea. I mean, we're probably never ever going to do anything like this ever again, and we're not going to have an entire branch of special forces that specializes in it. Sorry, anyways, that's exactly what they do. They get dropped off in Egypt, they track down Hamet, they're like, hey, you want to go overthrow your brother? Cool, grab your guys, let's go. Somewhere along the way, the Marines also picked up 50 Greek mercenaries as they all began marching 500 miles through the Libyan desert to get back to the Tripolitan coast. And this march through the desert takes 50 days, and it is a complete shit show because somewhere along the way, they start running low on supplies and they have to start rationing, and then some people get mad. There's accusations because the Greek guys are Christian, Hamet's guys are Muslims, there's fighting amongst themselves, and there's these 8 Marines standing in the middle desperately trying to keep them from killing each other as they march through the desert. So despite multiple mutiny attempts and a ton of fights, the Marines were able to keep this group together enough to make it through the Libyan desert till they arrived at the coastal city of Bamba. Once they get there, they meet up with the USS Argus that gives them a bunch of supplies so they can start eating food again, and they give enough money to pay off the Greek mercenaries. Then Eaton decides that he's going to send a letter over to the governor of Derna right next door, because remember, we can't attack unless they're potentially aggressive. Okay, so he sends a letter and is basically like, hey, I'm going to march my army through the middle of your town to go kill your boss on my way to Tripoli. Can I have some safe passage and maybe some food? The governor of Derna sends a letter back that says, my head or yours, which sounds potentially aggressive enough. So they begin making the plan for the ground attack. Hamet and his men are going to take the governor's palace, and the Marines and the Greek mercenaries are going to take out the harbor fortress. But to do that, they're going to need a cannon from the USS Argus, so they're going to meet up with it, go get this cannon, and prepare for their attack. Cut back to Stephen Decatur. While all this has been happening, there's still been a naval battle in the Mediterranean the entire time, and Stephen Decatur is on an absolute rampage, because after he captured his first pirate ship, he would receive word that his brother, James Decatur, had been mortally wounded by one of the pirate ship's captains, who was pretending to surrender before shooting his younger brother. Upon hearing this, Decatur immediately gives command of the new captured vessel to one of his men, leaves a couple guys with him, and takes off to track down this pirate ship that just killed his brother. So they chase down this pirate ship, they pull up right next to it, and before the crew has time to do any boarding procedures, you know, like break out the planks, tie some ropes to the other ship, all that stuff you see in the movies, nah. Stephen Decatur jumps into the enemy ship and starts killing pirates immediately. 9 Marines, seeing that happen, are like, oh shit, we're doing this. So they jump onto the pirate ship too and start throwing down, at which point the pirate ship veers off and breaks away from Decatur's ship. It is now 9 Marines and Stephen Decatur versus over 30 pirates on this vessel, and 30 is not going to be enough. Stephen Decatur kills multiple pirates, including the captain that had slain his brother, officially avenging his brother's death, capturing that vessel as well. But he is still absolutely furious that his brother died, and he continues to go on a rampage, capturing another pirate ship and destroying 3 more over the coming weeks.
Guys, that just shows what happens when you mess with family. Can you believe that just 9 Marines went on to take on 30 of those pirates, and they took them out. I mean, that just shows the bravery of those men involved. I cannot imagine being so outnumbered like that. It must be such a scary, scary prospect. But these men, I'm telling you now, they were built different. These were a different breed back then. They were so tough, so brave. So yeah, big shout out to Decatur. He definitely avenged the loss of his brother.
Cut back to the men on the ground. Eaton and O'Bannon have been getting their battle plan ready this entire time. They just had their men go get a cannon off the USS Argus because they really need this cannon if they're going to be able to pull off this mission. So they're ready to attack. The US Navy gets into formation and they are going to bombard the entire city of Derna while they launch this attack. Despite that, there's over 2,000 men loyal to Pasha Yusuf that are going to defend it, and they are heavily outnumbered. So Navy starts bombarding the shore. Hamet and his men take off to go attack the governor's palace, and Eaton, O'Bannon, the Marines, and the Greek mercenaries begin launching their attack on the harbor fortress. They open up with the initial cannon fire, which is going to be vital to be able to break through the enemy lines and establish their foothold. They fire the cannon. As they go to reload and fire it again, they realize that they had accidentally forgot to take the ramrod out of the cannon and shot that at the enemy too. Now the cannon's completely out, and they're kind of like, oh shit, what do we do? What do we do? And Presley O'Bannon just charges into battle as the other Marines follow behind him and the Greek mercenaries behind them. They attack so quickly and so violently that they're able to overrun the entire enemy fortress before anybody really knows what's going on. And Presley O'Bannon becomes the first American ever to raise the Star-Spangled Banner over a foreign battlefield. This battle, the taking of the Tripolitan coastal city of Derna, is enshrined in Marine Corps history in the Marine Corps hymn with the line, "From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli." And it is also where the Marine Corps would get their first nickname ever, because the 7 Marines present for this battle fought so hard and so violently that they simply became known as the Leathernecks, referring to the leather collar that they wore around their neck to protect it from slashes from pirate swords. So Yusuf's men end up getting beaten back and are forced to retreat to Tripoli, at which point the Marines, the Greeks, and Hamet and his men all consolidate, figure out what happened. Hamet and his men were able to take over the governor's palace, and after the taking of the city of Derna, Hamet awards his very own sword to Presley O'Bannon as a gift for how valiantly he fought in battle. And this is the Mameluke sword, the same sword that is on the Marine Corps uniform today. So now Yusuf consolidates his military, sends an enormous army back to Derna to try to take it back over, and they're kind of just sitting on the outskirts of the city, waiting for the right moment to attack. Eaton and O'Bannon are writing correspondence to the US military in the chain of command like, hey, we took this entire city with like 8 Marines, give us some reinforcements, we're gonna go take Tripoli next, and then we'll just overthrow this entire country. This goes on for over a month, and they defend the city multiple times from attacks from Yusuf's men, and eventually Eaton receives a letter informing him that he is to stand down and just leave, because American diplomat Tobias Locke has struck up a deal with Yusuf Karmanali. And apparently he struck up this deal with absolutely nobody's permission, because the deal is America is going to pay Yusuf Karmanali, the pirate king, $60,000, and in exchange we are going to receive the USS Philadelphia back, as well as a peace treaty that they are going to leave American ships alone from now on. So yeah, everybody's pretty pissed off about it, from Thomas Jefferson, Presley O'Bannon, William Eaton, Stephen Decatur. They're all furious that we are now giving $60,000 to this pirate king, as opposed to overthrowing his entire city of Tripoli, or at a minimum using the fact that they're holding Derna and use that as leverage to exchange. But whatever, the war's over, I guess. For now. So the peace treaties were signed in 1805. Now, fast forward 7 years, 1812, the War of 1812 happens. Okay, if you don't know, the War of 1812, there's more to it than this, but the reason that it started is that Great Britain wanted to have more control over the seas and trade, because America was getting too much, because America was no longer getting attacked by pirates, because we just beat them in a war now too. So Great Britain launches another war against America. During this war, they encourage the Barbary pirates to start attacking American vessels again. And honestly, it works out pretty good for the pirates, at least for a little while, because the American Navy is too busy to worry about them because their hands are full with the British Navy. Fast forward 2 years, 8 months later, the War of 1812 ends. Now, luckily for the Barbary pirates, Thomas Jefferson is no longer president at this point. We are on to America's 4th president. Let me check my notes here. James Madison. If you don't know, James Madison is one half of what is referred to as the Forefathers dynamic duo, and the other half is his best friend of all time, Thomas Jefferson. And I don't know if you figured this out yet at this point in the story, but Thomas Jefferson hates pirates. So sitting President James Madison, being the homie that he is, looks over at now Commodore Stephen Decatur and says,
"Go get him, Tiger."
He then proceeds to assemble the largest US naval fleet ever at this point in time and sails directly to the Barbary coast. He then immediately tracks down Algiers' flagship, the Mashuda, takes it out, captures over 400 members of its crew, and the ship itself. He then proceeds to take all of his gunboats directly to Algiers, park them in the port, and say, here's the deal. You're gonna surrender and you're never gonna collect tribute from anyone ever again, or I'm gonna overthrow your entire country. Obviously, they take the first option, at which point Decatur's like, okay, cool, next order of business. You're also gonna pay me back for all the US merchandise that you plundered during the War of 1812. And they're like, okay, here you go. They give it to him. He then proceeds to sail his fleet next door to Tunis and tell them the exact same thing, ordering them to sign a peace treaty, never raid an American vessel again, and then collects a bunch of money. He then sails them next door again to Tripoli and does the exact same thing, collects all this money, gets the peace treaties. The Barbary pirates never mess with America ever again. Decatur and his fleet sail back home, and he tells the government what happened. The American government is blown away at the results that Decatur was able to achieve when asked how he managed to not only get peace treaties without too much violence, but also get a bunch of money and concessions on top of it. All Decatur said was, peace was achieved through the mouth of our cannons, at which point he was given the nickname the conqueror of the Barbary pirates.
Oh,
and with the rest of the world seeing a new country in its infancy stand up for itself against the Barbary pirates and winning, they would start doing it too, and everybody started fighting back and quit paying tribute to the Barbary pirates, and in the coming years, they would fade into nothing as their 300-year reign of terror had come to an end. So in conclusion, the moral of the story is, please, for the love of God, do not mess with America's boats. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at the...
So folks, that was absolutely amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed that. The Fat Electrician is just one of the best storytellers on YouTube. Absolutely love watching his videos. I hope you enjoyed that too. So interesting to hear the origin stories about how the US Navy and US Marines were formed, and their bravery during these wars was just unprecedented. You know, if you consider that this happened soon after their independence, they weren't even a sovereign state for that long, yet they were able to, be braver than some of the biggest nations in the world. But that is America for you. It's definitely a country that you should be very, very proud of. But folks, that is all I have for you today. Again, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be uploading videos similar to this every single week, sometimes even daily. But until next time, I hope you have a good one. I'll see you when I see you. Cheers.